The Call of the Wild. He was called Buck, and he lived a life of pampered royalty. In the sun-drenched Santa Clara Valley, he was the undisputed king of Judge Miller's sprawling estate. He swam in the cool tank, escorted the judge's daughters on their walks, and lay at the judge's feet before a roaring fire on winter nights. He knew nothing of the world beyond the garden walls, a world of men and toil and biting cold. His every need was met, his every whim indulged. He was a magnificent animal, a cross of St. Bernard and Scotch shepherd, brimming with strength and ignorant of evil. But a shadow loomed in this paradise. Manuel, one of the gardener's helpers, had a weakness for gambling, a vice that demanded money he did not have. One night, under the pretense of a walk, Manuel led Buck away from the house and into the darkness. Buck went willingly, trusting the man. The trust was his undoing. A rope was thrown around his neck, tightening, choking him. He fought with the fury of a betrayed king, but it was for naught. He was sold for a pittance and shoved into a wooden crate, his growls of outrage echoing into the night. His civilized life was over. For 2 days and nights, the crate was his prison, a jolting, rattling hell. He was tormented by thirst and a burning rage. He neither ate nor drank, nursing his wounded pride and fury. He did not know what was happening, only that every man he saw was an enemy. When the crate was finally opened, it was not to his sunny home, but to a grim, noisy waterfront in Seattle. A stout man in a worn red sweater met his enraged charge not with kindness, but with a heavy club. As Buck sprang, the club swung. The blow caught him mid-air, sending him crashing to the ground. Dazed but not defeated, he charged again, and again the club met him with agonizing force. It was Buck's first brutal lesson in the primitive law. A man with a club was a lawgiver, a master to be obeyed, though not necessarily appeased. Beaten and bleeding, but with his spirit unbroken, he learned the necessity of submission. It was a lesson he would never forget. He was sold again, this time to 2 French Canadians, Perrault and Francois. They were dark-skinned, swift-moving men who spoke in a strange, guttural language. They were fair men who judged a dog by its worth and respected those that worked hard. Aboard the steamship Narwhal, bound for the north, Buck felt his first snow. It was not like the gentle rain he knew. It was a swarm of tiny, white, stinging flies that bit his skin and then vanished. He licked it, and it was a soft, cold bite that melted on his warm tongue. The Northland was calling. On the deck, Buck met other dogs of his kind, huskies and wolfhounds from the cold lands. He watched a good-natured Newfoundland named Curly approach a husky in a friendly manner, only to be attacked with a speed he'd never witnessed. A circle of other dogs closed in, and before Francois could intervene, Curly was torn to pieces. It was another lesson. There was no fair play in this new world. Once you were down, that was the end of you. At Dyea Beach, Buck felt the harness for the first time. It was a degradation, a mark of servitude. But he watched the other, more experienced dogs, like the grim and aloof Dave and the solitary Saul Lex, and he learned. He learned to stop at hoe, to go at mush, and to swing his body in the traces to help steer the sled. It was hard, monotonous work, but it awakened something deep within him, a forgotten instinct of his ancestors who had pulled sleds across frozen wastes for centuries. The greatest challenge was not the work, but the lead dog, Spitz, a big snow-white husky from Spitzbergen. He was a treacherous and cunning fighter who had killed many dogs. He saw Buck as a rival from the first day. Spitz was clever, and he would go out of his way to bully Buck, stealing his food and nipping at him when Francois wasn't looking. The animosity grew, a low, simmering hatred that both dogs knew could only end in a fight to the death. The final confrontation was sparked by the chase of a snowshoe rabbit. The pack, mad with the bloodlust of the hunt, pursued the frantic creature across a moonlit clearing. Buck was in the lead, but at the last moment, Spitz took a shortcut and made the kill. The simmering rivalry exploded. Under the ghostly, dancing lights of the aurora borealis, they circled each other, a silent promise of death in the frozen air. It was a battle of instinct and intelligence, of wild cunning learned over 1,000 generations. Spitz was the more experienced fighter, but Buck possessed something Spitz did not: imagination. A gift from his civilized past, it allowed him to think, to anticipate. He faked a lunge for the shoulder, and as Spitz met it, Buck drove low, breaking the husky's leg. The fight was over. The wolfish circle of the pack, which had been watching silently, closed in. Buck turned away, his duty done. With Spitz gone, Buck refused to be harnessed anywhere but in the lead position. Francois tried to put Sol Lex there, but Buck would not allow it. He whined and bristled, showing his teeth, until Perrault, laughing, gave in. "Go, Buck," he said. "You have earned it." The moment the traces were fastened, Buck felt a surge of pride. He was a born leader, and the team knew it. The team had never been so unified, so powerful. Buck enforced discipline with a firm but fair authority Spitz had never possessed. They broke trail records, their sled a single, living entity under Buck's command. They flew across the ice, covering ground at a speed that amazed even the seasoned Perrault. Buck was in his element, his wild nature now fully awakened and in control. He was the master of the trail. Their journey with the mail train ended, and the team was sold. The new owners were a stark contrast to the hardened couriers. They were Hal, a young man barely out of his teens, Charles, his middle-aged brother-in-law, and Mercedes, Charles's wife. They were foolish city dwellers, utterly unprepared for the harsh realities of the North. They saw the dogs not as living creatures, but as machines for their ill-conceived gold rush dreams. The journey was a nightmare from the start. They overloaded the sled with canned goods and fancy tents, and when the dogs couldn't move it, they beat them. They underfed the dogs, rationing out small portions while they themselves ate heartily. The journey became a slow, agonizing crawl of starvation and exhaustion. The dogs, once a proud and powerful team, were reduced to skeletons, their spirits crushed by cruelty and incompetence. The dogs died one by one. Their bodies were left where they fell, unmourned. Spring was coming, and the trail was melting, becoming treacherous. Yet the foolish owners pressed on, ignoring the warnings of seasoned prospectors. Buck's own life force ebbed away. He had survived the club and the fang, but he was being destroyed by simple ignorance. He felt the ice groaning beneath his paws and knew that death was near. At the mouth of the White River, Buck refused to move. He had a sense of impending doom. Hal, enraged by the dog's defiance, began to beat him mercilessly with the club end of his whip. Buck took the blows without a whimper, too weak to fight back, too wise to continue. He had made his decision. He would die here. "If you strike that dog again, I'll kill you," a voice boomed. A man named John Thornton had been watching. He was a man who understood the North. He cut Buck free from the traces with his knife. Just then, with a great cracking sound, the rotten ice of the river gave way, swallowing Hal, Charles, Mercedes, and the remaining dogs. Thornton had saved Buck from a certain and terrible death. For the first time in his life, Buck felt true love. With John Thornton, he was not a king or a beast of burden, but a devoted companion. Thornton nursed him back to health, his gentle hands and soft voice healing wounds deeper than the flesh. Buck would sit for hours, gazing at Thornton's face, a fierce, burning adoration in his eyes. His loyalty was absolute. He would have died for the man who had saved him. This love was proven time and again. When a malicious man named Black Burton struck Thornton in a bar, Buck flew at his throat, and only Thornton's command saved the man's life. Later, when Thornton fell into a raging river, Buck leaped in without hesitation, again and again, until he managed to bring his master to safety. His devotion became a legend in the mining camps of the Yukon. But even as he loved Thornton, the wild called to him, a song from deep within the forest. It was a howl, ancient and compelling. He began to take long journeys into the woods, sometimes for days at a time. He ran with a timber wolf, his wild brother, learning the ways of the hunt, his senses growing sharper, his muscles harder. He was torn between two worlds, the world of the campfire and the man he loved, and the primeval world of tooth and claw. One day, returning from a long hunt, he scented a change in the air. He found his way back to the camp, to a scene of devastation. Yihat warriors had attacked. He found Thornton's beloved dog, Skeet, dying, and then he found Thornton himself, lying face down, an arrow in his back. The last tie to humanity, the bond of love that had held him from the wild, was severed. A great and terrible rage filled him. He became a thing of terror, a furry whirlwind of vengeance. He hunted the Yihats through the forest, a ghost dog that killed silently in the night. He had answered the call of the wild. After his master was avenged, he joined the wolf pack that had called to him. He became a legend whispered by the Yihats with fear and awe, the ghost dog of the Northland, who ran at the head of the pack, singing the song of a newer world.